Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about something that I've personally seen firsthand over and over and over again. Something is quietly killing dental practices. And by kill, I mean completely kills their growth and development. And you may be wondering, okay, Chris, what is this thing? It is the lack of using what I call the DDF framework. And then you're also probably thinking, what is this DDF framework? What is it about? Well, I'm going to explain what that is in a moment here. But before I do, I need to set the stage and give you some context first. Okay? As some of you may know, if you've been following me long enough, I run a marketing agency for dental clinics. And it's kind of a unique position that we get to see, like behind the curtain, so to say, of a ton of other dental clinics. And we make the ads for them. And of course, we run the ads, we see the traffic, and most importantly, we listen to the calls, okay? And what happens after the phone rings? And how does the phone call go from beginning to the end? And here's the pattern that we see consistently repeat itself. Two clinics running the exact same ads in a similar area can have wildly different results. And I'm talking about clinics that are doing 15 to 20 arches, and the other clinic is doing 1 to 2 arches. Exact same ad spend, exact same qualifications, questions, demographics, all of it. So, what is the difference? What exactly is the difference between one clinic being successful and then one not being successful, one stagnating? And I remember when I first started noticing this, by the way, because at the beginning you kind of assume that it's random. You assume it's timing or the office not getting a hang of things right away, or maybe there's just better patience in one area versus the other area. I started telling myself these stories when I was running their marketing campaigns, and we got to the point that we were seriously scratching our heads. Like, why are two clinics in the exact same marketing or running the exact same marketing, exact same areas, performing completely differently? And here's what happened after many weeks of scratching our heads and running multiple marketing campaigns. You eventually notice that it's not random. It's actually far from random, and you start realizing there's something deeper going on. And here is what we realized: it's not a lead problem, and it's not a qualification problem. It's a team and intake systems problem. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, by the way. I don't mean that anyone on your team is doing anything wrong, so to say, or doing anything wrong on purpose. It's not malicious. I mean, it never really is. But nobody taught dentists that the phone call is not an administrative tool. And what I mean by that is it's not a scheduling tool. It's not just something that you do to fill the calendar and just handle patient complaints. It's the strongest filtering, first impression, and most importantly, selling tool that you have. And most dental practices, they don't treat it that way. But let me give you an example to kind of hammer in this point here. The best way that I've ever been able to explain this in a way that everyone can relate to is with real estate. So imagine you're buying a house, right? You hired a real estate agent. You walk into an open house, you're touring the open house, and the realtor just says, or they unlock the door and they just say, hey, there's the kitchen over there, there's the bedrooms upstairs, there's the bathroom. Let me know if you want to put in an offer, and let me know how soon you can close. That would feel completely insane, right? Because buying a house isn't just about square footage or the physical aspects of the home. It's not just how many bedrooms there are or how many bathrooms there are. It's really about timing. It's about money, of course. It's about the life stage that you're in. It's about stress. It's about like envisioning yourself in that home, in that neighborhood. It's about uncertainty. It's about whether this even feels like the right move right now, or should you wait a little bit longer for the rates to drop, right? That uncertainty when you have maybe more of a down payment saved up. A lot of other factors that have nothing to do with the house itself. And guess what? That's basically how a lot of dental practices run their phone calls and consult experiences. Exactly like that realtor example in the beginning. And it's not because our dental staff or our dental team, they don't care. It's not because they're bad people. I mean, of course, it's usually not that. That's usually not the case. What is the case is dental team members aren't properly trained and aren't trained in handling office phone calls and let alone specific phone calls. Okay, the vast majority of phone calls are handled as transactional phone calls, when in fact they're actually sales and transformational phone calls. When someone calls your office, especially for more involved procedures, they're not just calling to schedule. They're calling because they're in a moment of, let's say, indecision, and they're looking for a place that they can trust, some place that they can get started with their treatment. That's why they're calling you. They're not calling your office to order a burger, right? It's a large purchase, few thousands of dollars, sometimes five figures. It's a large commitment financially, it's a large commitment emotionally. So with that out of the way, let's get into what we call the DDF, what I talked about in the beginning, the deep discovery and follow-up. And I know frameworks can sound cheesy sometimes, but the reason that we like this one is because it's one, simple, and it actually reflects reality. And most importantly, when used properly, it works every single time. Okay, so let's start with the first part, the deep discovery. And I want to explain this slowly because this is where most people, they go wrong, where they just can't get their head around what a deep discovery actually is. What a deep discovery is just in the name, diving deep and discovering why the patient called, what they're looking for, but also building a deeper connection with them, rather than that surface level connection. And that is going to massively help you later on. Most practices, like I said, treat phone calls like they're logistics, like they're just something that they can just check off a list. They treat it like, okay, let's get your name, let's get your insurance, let's get you on the schedule, and we're going to see what the doctor says. That is 99% of practices. And that maybe sounds normal to you. That maybe sounds professional. I hope not. Hell, maybe even it sounds efficient. But here's the thing. What I've learned is you need to do the exact opposite of what everyone else is doing in order to not get the results that everyone else is getting. And what do I mean by that? If everyone is rushing through phone calls, if they're rushing through getting information, and they're just trying to get the patient on the schedule, do the exact opposite. Slow down and do a deep discovery. Why do you need to slow down and do a deep discovery? Because I promise you, you are going to stand out. Teeth and seeking treatment is almost never the real motivator. That is just the surface level motivator. People don't wake up and go, you know what? I think I'm going to spend $20,000, $30,000 on my teeth today, on dentistry today, right? That's ridiculous. They wake up because something is deeper, or something deeper is bothering them. Some deeper pain, whether it's, physical pain with dentistry, psychological life pain too, that's intertwined. They wake up because something needs to change. They wake up because something happened in their mind that finally crossed that line and made them take some kind of action to improve their current situation. And if your team doesn't understand that, your close rate is going to be awful. You're going to be doing way fewer cases than you would with a much stronger and more prepared and more well-trained sales team. By the way, I listen to calls across 10 to 20 offices because we do marketing, and we see this all the time when we listen to calls. You hear things like, are you using insurance from the team member? Or we're going to see what the doctor says. Or here is a lecture on zygomatic implants and what they are. And here's the type of bone graft that we use. Or we can get you in next Tuesday and I don't even know your name. All in the first 1 to 2 minutes, by the way. Just like a dump of information, no rapport, no trust building, no connection, just purely transactional. Like the patient owes you for showing up to the appointment and getting their treatment done with you and paying you $40,000. That doesn't work, okay? You're gonna get lucky a few times, but just imagine how much you're missing out on if you're running like 99% of dental practices. Okay, so when I talk about the deep discovery, what we're really talking about is just slowing down, okay? Just enough to understand the human side of that person that is calling you. Like, why now? Why you? Why our office? Why this matters to them right now? Where are they from? What do they do? Have they prepared themselves financially at all? Have they been doing any research? Because there's something that we have learned time and time again. A good lead is someone who has built a connection and trust with your office. They have urgency and they're prepared in some shape or form financially, or they're moving towards that. And that only happens when you spend time getting to know these leads. It doesn't happen when you just rush through the entire phone call experience. And let me give you a few more examples so you can really get the deep discovery point hammered down here. Let's say a patient is interested in implants and they're calling 3 offices, so to say, right? 2 out of the 3, they sound the same tone, same answers, same everything. And that the one that they end up choosing isn't the cheapest one. It's the one that they trusted more and had better rapport with, both on the phone and in the office. And I'm telling you this happens all the time and time again, because we get feedback from patients in our office. They have been to multiple consults and they decide to start with us because they felt comfortable, or everyone cared for them differently in this office, on the phone and in person. All of those things matter. Then, let's say you have the cosmetic patient, right? And they just say, oh, I'm just curious. And everyone feels like they're just kicking tires or just wasting your time. But half the time, it's not just curiosity. It's just them being a little bit fearful of the unknown, fearful of what they're going to look like, fearful of the financial aspect. They just want someone that they can trust to move forward with, but they want someone to guide them first, okay? And then lastly, you've got the busy people, or really most people nowadays. I mean, I don't know why they're all busy, but anyways, the people that don't answer their phones on the first few phone calls or the first few voicemails. And what happens is your staff, where everyone says, oh, they're bad leads, or I get no answers, or this or that, which is true. But the reality is a majority of those people don't answer, or the majority of people don't answer the phone calls as soon as possible, especially with numbers that they don't recognize. I mean, do you answer your phone call as soon as possible with numbers that you don't recognize? You need to keep trying multiple times, especially now in 2026 and beyond, with call centers, AI call centers, and so on. People are tired of it. And they don't just live their life around your schedule and when you're calling them. All that to say, that is what deep discovery is really about. Not rushing to get someone scheduled, not asking them a million scripted questions that you have on a sheet, not interrogating people or talking about procedures or insurance or just hammering on those things. Just actually understanding why they called, why now, and where they're at, and how you can help them. And here's the important part, because this is where dentists get a little bit defensive, which is strange, but anyways, they get defensive about this. This isn't about your team being bad or that they can't do this. It's about poor frameworks and poor training and lack of practice, like no practice at all. Practices that aren't intentional about their team training and intake as they are about the dentistry that we do here, they're going to suffer. And what happens when you're not intentional about that is your team defaults to what feels safe and what feels easy, right? I mean, that's natural. Scheduling, information, handing it off to the doctor and just avoiding any type of deeper communication. And then later, when the patient doesn't show up or doesn't move forward with treatment, or the story becomes, yeah, these leads they're not great. Bad leads. But now hopefully you've realized it's not the leads. Okay, so we got the deep discovery covered. Now let's talk about F, follow-up. I hinted at this a little bit earlier with patients that don't answer on the first call or second call. This is your gold mine. Why? Because the majority of clinics just throw these leads aside after trying like 1 to 2 times. They think if someone doesn't answer once or twice, that's it. They're done. I'm just gonna not focus on these leads. I'm just gonna maybe move them to a different bucket. They're considered dead. And then they just move on. But the reality is the best patients are usually the hardest to reach. I mean, think about it, right? They're busy. Like I said, they're doing God knows what. They're not gonna answer a random number on the first try. They're tired of random phone calls. They're working. They're living their lives. They're just not going to answer the phone in whatever shape or form. They're living their lives, or that they don't decide to answer the phone, they're not going to answer on the first or even second try. The easy to reach patients are not always the best patients. Most of the time, they're just the most available patients, and availability does not mean that they're the best patients. So what happens in most offices is this, okay? They call once, maybe twice, like I said. They leave one voicemail, maybe a text or two, and then mentally that patient just gets thrown away. They just get thrown in the trash. What I'd recommend you do is follow up multiple times until you get them on the phone or they literally tell you to screw off. Like honestly, utilize multiple channels, texts, voicemails, emails maybe. Make your voicemails a little bit more creative. Reference something specific, such as how they answered your inquiry form or something. Make your voicemail stand out from anyone else that is calling them. The best leads are going to be the hardest to reach, and that's your lesson. You need to put in more work in the follow-up. And if your system, by the way, only works for people who answer their phone on like a Tuesday at 10 a.m., you're not really building a high-performing practice. You're just building a convenient practice, a practice that only does well when it's easy. And with that said, before I end this off, I want to talk about easy things actually. Let me just get in a little bit of a tangent here. You know this deep down. You know that, I mean, you're a dentist that has likely gone through a lot of shit to get to where you're at. You know that anything worthwhile in life is gonna be hard to get. Good patients are hard to get. They're not easy. Great cases are not easy to get. Performing great dentistry is not easy. There's a ton of hours put into it, a ton of practicing, as we know. Trust is not easy to get from patients. You get the point, right? Also, chasing isn't as annoying as we make it in our heads, like chasing patients and doing follow-up. The worst thing that a patient could tell you is just to stop contacting me, and you need to come to expect that. Your team needs to come to expect that. When done right, follow-up is going to skyrocket your results, and you're going to have great phone calls when you consistently follow up. And by the way, you can't run this type of follow-up and great quality phone calls with staff that are like inundated with BS, or they're too busy, or they have a lot of excuses, they have no support. If that's your reality, that obviously that needs to change first. And that's really it for this video. At some point, every practice has to decide what kind of business they want to run. Do you want to run a practice that hopes people move forward and just relies on like easy give-me's? Or do you want to run a practice that builds systems and a team that help people move forward? Because those are two very, very different things. So to zoom out and kind of give you a summary of this video, this is what I'm saying. Before you blame your marketing or a lot of these external factors, look internally first. Just look inside, deep down. And this is, by the way, this goes for anything in life. Just look internally first. Audit your phone calls. Listen to the conversations that your team is having on these phone calls. Listen to the depth of these conversations that they're having. What happens after these conversations? How are leads being handled on the front end when they don't answer? What is your follow-up system like, if you even have a follow-up system? I'm going to tell you this, okay? Systems and purposeful action and training is going to get you there. And that's it for this video, guys. There's much more coming this year, by the way, and I'll see you in the next one.